Have you ever wondered to yourself, why are mass shootings increasing? Why are hate crimes increasing? Why do crazy people do these crazy things? Could you become crazy one day? Could your kids? I think this is a very important question to answer because ultimately, what is happening in these people could happen in us. So let's think about this a little bit and try and figure this out. I've recently been reading a book called Under Siege, Islamophobia and the 9/11 Generation by Jasmine Zine. It's a book that talks about how 9/11 set off an Islamophobia industry. So it's more than just hate that is projected against Muslims while the war is happening in Iraq and Afghanistan. But rather it is more that there is all this industry happening in the media where people spread hate on Islam and they profit off of that actually. So it's an interesting topic to read. And I've been posting my reflections on Twitter. So if you're on Twitter, make sure to follow me so you can get more of these reflections. But something that I read while reading it the other day made me pause. And this was about the massacre that happened in the Québec Mosque in 2017. So now we're on the 6th anniversary of this mass shooting in Quebec. So this crazy guy walked in late at night after the last prayer of the day was done and he shot the place up. He killed 6 Muslim guys and he injured 19. Many of the people hurt that day and their families, their lives, they will never be the same again. So I think it's really important for us to understand why such things happen. So the obvious answer that everybody talks about is hate and people that spread hate, people that spread rumors and misunderstandings. Instead of trying to understand the reality of the people that they hate, they rather go and just end them, But that's the surface level, Like, I feel that this is one aspect for sure. But there are so many people that hate Muslims that don't go and shoot up a mosque. So what's the difference between the person that shoots up a mosque and somebody that doesn't? Reading one of the statements that the killer made with the police helped me understand and think about this problem. I think that the world lacks understanding today. We have people that spread very little information, but they take up so much time because it's entertainment. And they take all this time to spread a very stupid idea. They don't spend enough time actually figuring out the truth of the subject they're talking about. They spread this small kernel of information and they blow it up. They turn it into these things. And so scandals are happening every day as a result. But when you look past the headline and you dig into the story, a lot of the time, you find out that it's not what they make it out to be. It's not this hype that they create, and that's one very problematic situation that the media feeds into, whether it's social media, alt media, or mainstream media. They all do that now because they're all competing for clicks and attention. And the only way to grab attention is to have a misleading headline. Now, how many people read the headline and not read the story and just assume what the story is about? I would say that the majority of people see the headline, just take the information without reading the story. So it's really important that our headlines are not just clickbait because they themselves spread so much misinformation. We all have to take responsibility for ourselves not to be misled by these headlines, but we also have to hold the media accountable for using misleading headlines as clickbait. Now let's look at what this murderer said. What motivated him to go and kill and injure so many Muslims? He said, "I was watching TV and I learned that the Canadian government was going to take more refugees who couldn't go to the United States. And they were coming here. I saw that and I lost my mind. I don't want us to become like Europe. I don't want them to kill my parents, my family. I had to do something. I couldn't do nothing. It was something that tortured me. So clearly, this guy was motivated by an altruistic incentive. He felt like he wanted to do something for his family, for his country. He wanted to serve his community. But how did he get so misguided? I mean, these feelings are good feelings, right? Aren't they? Isn't he being patriotic? How is that a bad thing? But why did it turn into this craziness? Why? Maybe in his heart, he's a good person. Maybe in his heart, he was a good person. Yet the information that he got misled him. But more than that, if you look closely at what he's saying, the worst thing that he did was think that it is his responsibility to fix things. I mean, he was a kid. I don't know how old he was. I think he was in his 20s. And he threw his whole life away. He thought he was that indispensable. His whole life, he threw it away. He knew the risks. He knew he could have gotten shot. And even if he didn't get shot, he will be caught. You know that he must have known that this was the most likely chance. There's so much tracking, so many cameras now. So he must have known that he would get caught. So he knew what he was doing. He was throwing his life away. Again, very altruistic. What did he do wrong? He thought it was his responsibility to fix this imaginary problem that he had. When it's your responsibility to do something, you gotta do anything to deal with the problems that you face. When it is your responsibility, and only then is it a good thing. When a father is taking care of his family, making sure they have food to eat, a roof over their head, any hustle that he does, if it's a difference between them being thrown on the street or them having food and shelter, it will always be justified what they do to survive when you're at the edge. So when it's your responsibility to take care of your family and there's nobody that can help you, there is no service, no social support, you might need to steal in order to survive. You might need to do unethical things in order to survive. But what you're doing in that situation is the right thing to do because you're prioritizing things right. You're saying, this is my responsibility. The lives of my family are a higher priority than my life. If I lose my life to get them food, then so be it. And that, as bad as it is the reality. People don't hate Robin Hood. They see him as a hero. That's why Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, the second Khalifa, at some point, he put a hold on implementation of punishments for stealing. And he did that because people were starving. They needed food. If they steal in order to survive, that's their right. And obviously, the person that defends themselves and defends their property, that is also their right. But he wasn't going to punish them severely for stealing in order to survive. So these people were doing what they needed to do to survive, and it was their responsibility to do it. It's their responsibility to take care of themselves and their families. Meanwhile, this murderer thought that it's his responsibility to save his country from refugees. People online spreading hate, spreading rumors, spreading bad news, only spreading the negatives about what's happening in Europe with the refugees, not showcasing any positives. They are enraging people. They are getting people to get enraged. As they get more and more enraged, they pay more and more attention to them. They know that if they presented both sides of the story, people would not be as angry, would not care as much, would understand that it is not their problem to care about. But then this one crazy guy thought it was his responsibility to fix this imaginary problem. So he went and he did his heinous act. He killed people that meant so much to their family. They were breadwinners. They were providing for their family. They were paying taxes. They were productive members of the Canadian economy. And he thought that ending them would make people afraid to come to Canada. That's his solution. How very juvenile, how silly, how sad. But now let's turn the attention to ourselves. How many of us take responsibility, imagine that we are responsible for things that we are not responsible for? I think that's a question that each of us needs to ask themselves. It's hard to say. It's not something that people really look into. But there are many people today who spend their life just following bad news after bad news, talking about it, spreading it. They feel that they have to inform the world, guys, this is a big problem here. This is happening. Everybody's an activist today. We feel like we could change things, which is true. We can change things. Activists do change things. But unfortunately, they cause so much wrong for the very little that they get right. Look at Black Lives Matter? Do people think that the riots that happened were good? Do people think that the donations that went to the BLM organization that was wasted is good? None of it went to the families, apparently, or so I've heard. Do people think that the hate between the people and the police is a good thing? When people can't trust their own government, when people can't trust their own police, when people can't trust doctors, when people can't trust scientists, what are we going to do? Nobody trusts anybody anymore. Conspiracy theories are on the rise. Why is all this happening in the West today? Why is the West in decline? The answer is there is no respect for authority. There is no understanding of where your responsibility ends and other people's responsibility begins. And that is producing extremists on all sides. On all sides, people are taking up arms and saying, I'm going to fix the world. I know what the problem is. The problem is women who are not engaging with me, who reject me all the time. That's the incels. And they go and shoot them up and drive them over. It's happened. Some Muslims who are extremists also do extreme things and they go and shoot up people. It happens. But this idea that extremism, terrorism, is just the result of hate, that's silly. We all need to take responsibility for our own actions. We are feeding the machine. We are feeding extremism. We are each responsible for what's happening to us. Society is breaking down because of each of us. That is why the hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him, rings so true today, where he said, from the perfection of one's religion, Islam, is leaving what doesn't concern you. So to be a true Muslim, you have to leave what doesn't concern you. We're not talking about Iman here. We're talking about Islam, knowing your responsibility. What is my responsibility? What is not my responsibility is very important to be a true Muslim. When extremists try to take on responsibilities that are not theirs, that's when society starts to break down. People start justifying heinous acts, despicable acts, acts that destroy their lives of many, change the shape of our society, and promotes hate and distrust among people. Another way to understand it is that these people don't believe in qadr, don't have a complete understanding that God is always in control. They don't believe that. If they believed it, they wouldn't take on this responsibility. A true Muslim understands that their responsibility is all about their actions, all about what power they have. What do they do with that power? With their money, what do they do with that money? With their voice, what do they do with that voice? It's not about taking on responsibilities that are outside of ourselves. If it happens that you gain a position where you take responsibility for other people. Say you're a father. Yeah, you're a father. God gave you that responsibility. What do you do with that responsibility? You take care of your kids. You raise them well. If you're a manager in a company, okay, you're responsible for what you manage. You're responsible for your job. But in a company, we understand that if you get outside of line and you try to control things that are outside your jurisdiction, your domain, right away, you get into trouble. So we understand that in companies, we understand that in business, but we don't understand that in real life. If we are not the leaders of the country, we are not responsible. The future of the country is not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to put positivity into the country. God can take that positivity and keep the country strong and connected, if that is God's will. But if it is not His will, and that could be because the majority of people are sick inside, their hearts are dead, they're immoral. So why would He save a society like that? So fix yourselves, fix your families, raise them well, protect them from all the corruption in the world. That's the point. You're responsible for yourself and the people that you're directly responsible for. Anything beyond that, it is not actually your responsibility unless God gives you that leadership position, whether it's through your efforts to grow or it just happens to happen to you. Did Justin Trudeau work hard to get into his position, or was it given to him? Yeah, he worked hard a little bit, but he didn't spend his whole life trying to become prime minister, trying to do politics. He was a drama teacher. He was living a simple life. And then something sparked in him the want to get back into politics, to revive his father's vision. And he became prime minister easily. He was at the right place at the right time. Did he control that? Did he plan that? I don't think so. God ordained the position for him. and all the prime ministers of the world and all the kings. God gives them this leadership position. What they do with it is their responsibility, not ours. God says in the Quran, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. God does not change the state of people until they change what is within themselves. What is within us that is making the world so sick today? What is within us that makes our leaders the most corrupt people you could imagine? Ask yourself, have you taken responsibility for your portion of the corruption or not? Have you accepted the situation? You said, the world is corrupt, I might as well be corrupt too. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. That is it. Wake up. So my message to you today is have faith and know where your responsibility begins and where it ends. Take care.